Aloha mai kako, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode of the Moana Nui podcast. My name is Moana, and I will be your host tonight. Welcome to this month's episode of our Indigenous Legal Insights, which is our segment where we bring you legal assistance. Tonight's topic will be marriage, divorce, and separation. So I'm looking forward to talking through this because I know many listeners, I'm sure, will have some questions around this, whether it's you or a family member or a friend who has experienced this. So, with that said, I want to bring on our expert for our series, Kumu Michelle Manu. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you back. Long time no see.
Really long time no see. And see that I wore a leopard to the office today, and now I match my chair. So I don't know. Can you see me? Just kidding. Yeah, a really not fun topic, but a very important topic, like most of legal. So I look forward to your questions tonight. I did not prepare anything. I've been working in family law for private clients, not for a law firm, but for private clients when referred since 1995. So
Lots of experience.
yeah, so we can speak about some of the things that you will encounter when you decide to dissolve your marriage, legal marriage, and also some of the challenges that I've seen with parties that are not willing to get rid of a toaster or defer a collector spoon to their spouse, which holds up the divorce and makes it that much more costly and lengthy. So shoot away, Moana.
So interesting.
Bang,
And for those who are listening, if you have questions, comments, like please engage with us. We love for these to be engaging sessions. We always have like a list of questions, but if there's something that we can help you out with that you're tuning in, definitely drop them and we'll do our best to answer. So, for those who are just joining us now, we are talking about marriage, divorce, and separation and what that means. So, I guess the first question is: marriage is something that we hate to end. Maybe some people don't hate to end it. I don't know. It depends on your circumstance, of course. But so, for those who are pursuing or considering a divorce, what are some of like the first steps that they should consider when they're thinking about like the legal aspects of it and what should they be preparing for?
Well, it's interesting. I see some of my clients that are financially stable and have a lot of assets and a lot of liabilities. They like to divert some of the marital estate, which is the total amount, which of course is 50-50 unless you have a prenuptial agreement. And they like to divert some of that out of their spouse's name, or they liquidate and they move some of their liquid money, right? Their finances. And that is really not a good idea. This is why on a summons, when you file a petition for dissolution of marriage, on the summons, it actually says that you cannot do this. You cannot touch any of the marital assets or estate, the entire thing, until the judge has had an opportunity to take a look at what is fair and what is not fair for the parties that are splitting and what is rightfully the distribution of that estate. So I would suggest not moving any of your money. Leave it there. You can get penalized for moving assets and shifting liabilities. So that would be the first thing. Second, I'm assume that if you want to file for a petition of dissolution, that you've already tried mediation, voluntary, that you've gone to counseling. Usually there's another third party involved, and that's why someone wants to end the marriage. They want to be with someone else. And so you want at one time dedicated yourself to your spouse, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, till death do you part. These are the old school vows that are taken still to this day. And we know that in Southern California, which I'm going to speak on because this is where the majority of my experience is, 80% of marriages end in divorce here. It is the highest in the nation. And so we just want to make sure that you're honoring your spouse. And that means in every way, right? At one time, you dedicated your life to be a partner with this person. So going to that person and speaking with them and seeing if you don't even need to go through the courts initially. Maybe you can come to a satisfactory marital settlement agreement, and that is if there's no children and no property. If there are children and property, then it would be a property settlement agreement. They can be interchangeable. This is what I've seen over the years. And you can come to terms on all of that and then file it with the court if you don't want to hire attorneys. Now, you can also prepare this agreement, have it notarized, or hire attorneys, maybe a joint attorney, so you're not eating away at the marital estate with legal fees, and have them review the agreement to make sure that everything is covered, and that it says exactly in writing what you've agreed to verbally with your soon-to-be ex-spouse. And then you can file it with the court, and then it becomes official, and a judgment is entered, which will dissolve the marriage. And once that notice of entry of judgment is entered, you have a contract now that you must abide by. And this contract, this agreement, it goes over a lot. Who gets to claim the children every other year? What is the child visitation like every year for holidays? How much time does each child spend with each party, mom and dad, or dad and dad and mom? And how that looks, it can be as stringent and very strict, or you can have some leeway there where if the parties can get along well, then it doesn't need to be in writing. Also, taking the children out of the country. What type of religious training would you like them to be exposed to? What sports? So it depends on the age of the children as well. And of course, medical treatment for the kids, like who's going to carry insurance. So this really covers a lot in this agreement. So it's wise to have legal counsel take a look at it.
Okay, and so you said that's called the property settlement agreement.
Yes, if you have children and property, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have children, is it called something else?
Marital settlement agreement. So you're basically just setting out who takes what. Someone takes the couch, someone takes the toaster, who's going to move out, who's keeping the primary residence, or are you selling it? All sorts of things are covered in there, including usually the wife if she wishes to resort and restore back to her maiden name or previous name. So that's all there as well.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I didn't even realize there was like 2 different ones.
They can name them. It depends on who's drafting. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And so we're talking about the agreement that the 2 parties come to. What factors affect how assets are divided in a divorce?
Well, it's usually one spouse, whether it's male or female, is usually the breadwinner, and one is usually at home or works part-time. But sometimes there's 2 breadwinners, and they can agree without the judge ordering to leave the marriage with exactly what they came into the marriage with outside of household items. So it just depends. If one has been a caregiver of children or sick relatives, or for whatever reason, they added value to the homestead instead of working outside, then there's several factors that play into that. How can they possibly maintain a similar lifestyle in which they're accustomed to, but how readily available are they to go out and immediately go and find a job to be self-supporting? And sometimes the caregiving spouse hasn't had a chance to really go to school and to earn the degrees, or they've put their career on hold to care for the homestead. And so these are all factors that would be taken into account during the time of dissolution. And there's alimony, but there's also the alimony will continue until that spouse can be self-supporting reasonably, right? If you have one spouse that's driving a Lamborghini and the other one's driving a Corolla, the judge will take this into account too.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up alimony because that's always an interesting topic. How is that alimony typically determined, and then when can it be modified?
It can be modified at any time, and it's used. The disso master is a really accurate way where you put in one spouse's income, the other spouse's income, and then of course, if there's children, that complicates things. So, how much time are those percentages of time are those children spending with one spouse and the other? Obviously, if the children are going to spend more time with one of the spouses, then they will get an increased amount of child support there, which is independent, solely, wholly independent of alimony. So What we see today is really fascinating. There's more and more here in Southern California that will have the family residence and the children will stay put. And it's the spouses that will come in and stay with the children to make it more cohesive for the kids. They don't have to be moving around. It's the divorced couple that has to come and go. So you see that a lot here.
Oh, interesting. I
Yeah.
never thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's so more so that instead of the child going from house to house, the
And having
adult.
two bedrooms. Yeah. For continuity for the children, you see the spouses come and stay for a week or 2 weeks and even a month if one of the ex-spouses travels a lot for work. It's always better to try to work and collaborate with your ex-partner than it is to be combative. And for the children's sake, for the animals' sakes. Here, we've got so many animals that they spend time custody going back and forth to different homes. So it's really funny. Yeah.
Yes, all the fur babies.
Yes, the fur babies.
Sometimes people feel more passionate about the fur babies than the actual babies.
Yeah, crazy. They have nannies, and the nannies have their own rooms here. So yeah,
It's
that's two on the estate.
the nannies.
Yes, dog nannies. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, California. Why do you think like California has the highest rate? I mean, 80% and then divorce. That's pretty crazy.
I wouldn't put it all onto Californians. I think what I see a lot, it's really interesting. I see always sometimes one, well, there was a period of time, I'd say in the 2000s, where when I got into the paperwork, one spouse was from the Midwest a lot.
Okay.
Come out here and then they file out here after being residents for 6 months, yeah, 12 months. So one spouse is sometimes still in the Midwest. So I guess starting over.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure, honestly, why it is here. I think we've lost touch of our integrity, honestly. There's always
Mm.
something bigger and better out there, something newer under the hood, and money will do that. I think we see a lot that high income earners here, yeah, they don't grow with their spouse. They don't, it's fascinating. That's a whole different topic. Woo! Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about that
Yeah,
in
we
the
can.
future. Okay, so we talked about divorce, but like what is the difference between legal separation and divorce, and then how does each of those like affect the financial and legal responsibilities?
So legal separation is similar in the filings. Instead of checking the box for dissolution, it's petition for legal separation. And all of those prohibitions on transferring funds to and from and dissolving them while you're in a legal separation, you're barred from that as well. So it's similar, it just prolongs it. I think the legal separation, especially if one is poor with money, is very helpful. If one has a gambling addiction, they're not allowed now to access the marital estate to
Mm.
continue their addiction. So it provides some sort of protection. But with that said, sometimes the money is already removed from the marital estate before it's filed. And of course, without the knowledge of the other spouse. So trustworthiness is important. Legal separation, it gives you a time to take a break and to go into voluntary mediation and sometimes mandatory mediation. There's mandatory mediation now in a petition for dissolution, and the court has involvement in that. They assign a mediator, and you can elect to go and hire one of your own mediators, a mutually agreed upon mediator between the parties, and try to get down to the issues of all the things we mentioned that are in the agreement so that it can be painless. But here in California, you're unable to reach judgment within 6 months. That's the minimum waiting time. Sometimes divorces can drag out longer than 7 years here in California. So it's about working well with one another. And if you can't do that, it's really, really helpful to have a third party, a mediator come in where you don't have direct contact anymore. All communications go through that mediator, and he or she is able to remove some of the emotions and tone, of course, because you know your partner so well. It may look and read nicely. A voicemail may sound nice, but it's actually not. It's provocative. It's probing, it's poking, and it's better to have a third party in the center where you can just stick to the issues instead of the emotions or perceived emotions and perception of how someone's communicating with you. So mediation is a very, very great tool if you have the right mediator.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that goes for things not outside of divorce too. A good, fair
It's,
third party.
yeah, we should play the song, Let's Get Ready to Rumble.
Oh man. Yes, indeed. So earlier you kind of talked about how it's not advised for any party to kind of hide assets or move assets during a divorce. What happens when that, like, what's the consequences of that happening and how can those be uncovered, if at all?
Well, it's usually the spouse that had no knowledge that uncovers it when there's nothing left in the bank account, or they go to access maybe an investment account that they've been drawing from, and all of a sudden it's there's zero in the account. So that spouse would have to go before the court and ask them for a restraining order, which would then be sent to the financial institutions, whether it's a bank or it's something like an investment company like Schwab or Fidelity and the like, to where that spouse that withdrew everything, the offending spouse, would then be not allowed to access the account. Getting the monies back is very difficult. So it would be up to the judge on he or she, how she or he would like to pursue that and if they can recover anything. Very sticky, very ugly.
Gotcha. Okay. So another financial questions. How can couples protect their credit and financial standing during a divorce
Oh
process?
my gosh, this is so difficult, especially when you involve IRS debt.
Mm,
They will go after the more responsible spouse, and you would have to file for innocent spouse consideration, where, let's say, one spouse hadn't filed taxes for 7 years, and then all of a sudden the divorce happens, and now you're going to change your filing status from married filing jointly to married filing separately during the divorce. And it's very difficult. They will garnish the wages, or in a nice way, the responsible spouse will be able to enter into a payment plan with the IRS. Now, then the responsible spouse can bring this to the court before judgment, and even after a judgment's been made, and say, this was all him, this was all her. Please, can you assign part of this debt to him or her? And even though the judge does that and you provide that judgment to the IRS, they will still ultimately I have found they still ultimately hold the responsible spouse responsible for the entire amount. So this is very difficult. Now, also, it doesn't, just because you file and it's under consideration for a dissolution of marriage, doesn't mean the credit card companies, unsecured, or any other type of financial institution will know that you've filed for divorce, and that there is this pretty much stop all accounts and applications for new accounts. They don't know that that's active. So your spouse could very well go out and get a credit card, even in his own name, in her own name, and ultimately it counts as marital debt. So it's very difficult because they can do this during a divorce. So sometimes the spouse that is unsure, and before the judgment is rendered and entered, you might want to hire a private investigator to see if any other new accounts have been opened while the divorce has been active. So it's very hard to deal with a spouse like this, that's financially irresponsible and just doesn't care.
yeah, that sounds horrible. So you mentioned from the IRS perspective that they hold the responsible spouse accountable to everything. How do you define, like, what is defined as the responsible spouse? Like,
Oh, I'd
meaning,
have to look up the IRC. Yeah, I thought
okay,
Internal Revenue Code to define it entirely, but anyone can check it out. Just type in IRS responsible spouse, innocent spouse, and that there's a filing where you can prove that he made all the income for this year. You're not responsible for that. You have your own I encountered something similar during my marriage. I divorced in 2004, so it's been a really long time, 20 years. But I was left with a significant amount of debt. So I can speak personally to
Mm.
this. I did file for 3 years of innocent spouse, and 1 year I was granted. The other two I was responsible for. It was a very difficult divorce for me. I learned a lot, and this is what ultimately made me more effective in helping my
Mhm.
client as a mediator. I had one very contentious divorce. It was really horrible. Quite a few contentious, but this one was horrific. A lot of money was involved, assets, a company business that was left. It was third generation business, family owned business with now kids involved and running it. And it was very difficult. So that was an interesting mediation that went on for a while. But luckily we ended on a good note. Everyone was happy, and it was just a lot of issues.
Yeah, I could see how that gets complicated really fast. I mean, it's bad enough when it's like two parties and then having a business and the kids and oh my gosh, messy, so messy.
pre,
Um,
pre and post nuptial agreements. I cannot tell you. And I like the domestic partnership now. It's in lieu of a marriage. It is such a beautiful thing that has been created and honed. And this was, it's not just for same-sex couples, it's for heterosexual couples too, where you go through all of these items before you get married. Who's
mm,
moving out, who's moving into whose residence, dogs, cats, parakeets, spoons and toasters, everything is accounted for. And then it's almost you go through all of these topics first. You set them all out in paper. It gets filed with the court. You have a contract between you. And then you get to enjoy each other and be with each other because you want to be with each other. And you don't have to have this looming, lingering fear that the one that you love, the one that you dedicated yourself to, is going to turn into an absolute a-hole nightmare if you stop getting along, if one finds someone else they want to be with, and you need to sever and now rip yourself apart from one another, that you already know how it's going to end with the retirement accounts, the kids, cars, everything from the couch to really retirement accounts that you really diligently saved
mhm.
before you even got married and became a legal item. So I love the domestic partnership option. I even would take it a step further and say that this marriage, this license to marry, this marriage license should actually be renewed. If this is a legal business, and not to take away the love and the butterflies, but you are literally just combining yourself with one another on paper and within the law. And they make it so easy to get married and so difficult to get divorced
Yeah.
that I think that the marriage license should be up for renewal every 2 or 5 years, no more than 5 years. Sit down with one another, talk about your relationship, your partnership in life, not just companionship, but being a partner, and say, you know what? Where have we fallen off? What did we intend? Do we want to continue? If we do, how do we want to continue? What needs changing? Amend the domestic partnership agreement, file it with the court, and hold each other accountable. And I think it's just a beautiful way to touch base too. I know many married couples, they will get together every month, talk it out, every quarter, definitely yearly. They go away and they look at last year, they look at the next year, what's important to each one together, how it impacts. Maybe one wants to quit work and go back to school. How does that impact the whole? And then they stay true to these intentions the rest of the year. And these are the really successful couples that we see that are both getting what they need out of the marriage, but also they're not giving anything up to be in the marriage. So they don't feel like they're lacking. So that something that new drives by with something bigger or newer under the hood is not so attractive anymore because they're really in it with their spouse. They're in it and ride and die. And they know that their spouse, not just familiarity, but they like each other. They like who they are. They trust one another. They I don't know, the character. They love each other for who they want. They would, if they weren't married, let me put it this way, they would still want to hang out,
Mm.
be friends with one another, be excited if something exciting, they want to share it with them. They want to go on trips. They let each other have that freedom to be who they are. I think the domestic partnership really sets it up for that exchange versus just, oh, I'm a white dress, and then before you know it, 2 years later, you're in divorce court. So really something to think about as an alternative.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never had somebody like take that perspective in terms of like a renewal, like kind of like a forced check-in. Although you like ideally you would want to be checking in all the time, but like let's be real, not everybody's
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah, doesn't happen because we're so
Yeah.
busy, and we're growing. Sometimes you'll find one spouse is fine, status quo, doesn't want anything to change, and the other one's like, well, I kind of want to experience this, I want to experience this. Or you see the sabotage of even just wait, just the food in the house and dinner time, and it becomes a way that they connect, but it's sabotage for one that actually wants to get healthier,
Mm.
and the other one just doesn't want to participate, it's happy the way they are.
Yeah, I could say, yeah, yeah, that's a hard one.
It is really hard.
It's a hard one.
And disappointment seeps in, and before you know it, you're unsatisfied, and then you start acting out of character. And
Mm.
we don't want to do that. At the end, you want to know that you did everything possible to maintain respect for someone that you once were head over heels for and had high hopes for. But the disappointment, that bitterness can just seep in and ruin everything. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that, because I think, like, prenups and those kinds of things, they're typically like, "Ooh," like, they're very different perspectives about this, but I can see, like, both ways of it, like, where it could be dangerous, right? Like, "Oh, do they really love you?" But then by the same token, like, having a conversation beforehand, like, how do we really feel about this, right? Like, and committing to doing like regular check-ins. Maybe if like those types of conversations happen before even the marriage act like comes, then like I feel like because it does take a level of maturity to have those conversations, right? Like maybe if you can't have that conversations, maybe that's a sign that you shouldn't be married, right?
Agree. Should be able to talk about anything.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Huh, so interesting. Yes.
Well, I have one that's financially responsible and one that's not. And I think it's, they even say there's archetypes for money management. And it's just, I find really fascinating. You've got the one that's like, live for today. We're not, there's no tomorrow. Spend every penny, right? And actually will spend on things that are emotional
Yeah.
versus then take from the rent or the mortgage or the car payment. And then they don't have enough for necessities, where you have the other one that's just, no, that's too expensive, penny pincher type of thing. And their love language is stability. So it's
Yes.
romanticized versus the stability. This is a huge problem for couples, huge problem. So talking about these things and helping the other spouse to see the other spouse's point of view and
Yeah.
strike a compromise is extremely important. If you cannot, say that one spouse that spends everything, and then you've got the other one that's penny pinching, and I would say just diligent. If the diligent spouse then is starting a company or has entered into a partnership with someone else, and now all of a sudden the monies that they plan to use towards the company is, and they've entered into a business agreement, now no longer those resources are available because this spouse is spending it, you've got a huge problem. And so the postnuptial will come into effect then to say, look, I can't have you sabotage this potential success over here and what I want to do. And that's really important. So it's never too late. You can always do a postnuptial. Your spouse may not agree to sign it, but it's worth it. It's worth a shot to preserve what you've worked so hard for.
Yeah, definitely. I had never heard of a postnuptial until today, so thank you for teaching me about
Yeah,
it.
of course.
Let's see. Okay, so we touched on retirement accounts a little bit. How does divorce like impact those, and then how does that get divided fairly, if it even is?
Well, it's 50% unless the spouse, the receiving spouse, agrees to less in lieu of maybe keeping the household property in lieu of other property. So they're entitled to 50%. And it's through a quadro, a qualified domestic relations order. And it's really quite simple. It will be ordered by the court, and then it will be provided to the financial institution that is holding that account. And then distribution would be made. So it's really quite simple.
Gotcha. Okay. So if the distribution is made, is that immediate? So then will there then be penalties, right? Like, because typically you're supposed to keep it in
Yeah,
retirement.
each account is different. So
Okay.
there's, yeah, the administration fee. Yeah. And sometimes spouses waive entirely. They waive any type of rights to that, again, in lieu of other property.
Gotcha. So the trade-offs.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Ooh. What should individuals do if their ex-spouse refuses to comply with the terms of the divorce agreement, such as a custody or asset division?
Or a modification of child support too.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find that some are paying less or not paying at all. Then if it's for child support, I would go through the state immediately because they will enforce it. And it doesn't come straight to you. It goes to the state and then the state will distribute it to you. There's always the option to go in and modify the terms of the property settlement agreement or marital settlement agreement. And the judge would oversee that. So it's easier, of course, in collaboration for both parties to agree to the amendment and have it notarized and then file that with the court. But sometimes it's not agreed upon. So you'll have to well, they already have it obviously in your file at court, but you can file for an amendment, a modification. Yeah. It can be as simple as like maybe one of the spouses is in the military and they are going to be
Mm,
deployed overseas for potentially 3 years or longer. Even if it's for one, the spouse that's stateside can file and say, I need full legal and physical custody. At once before he or she left for deployment, it was 50-50. So now I need 100%. And so that will get amended.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like this is where I've heard a lot of people talk about child support, alimony, like what is enough. Spouses who use it not for the purposes right of actual child support, but more about supplementing their own lavish
Yeah.
lifestyle. Yeah.
Yes. And if you're the spouse paying, then you have every right to take that to the court again and to have the receiving spouse account for how they're spending the child support. Because that's unfair. It's unfair to the children.
Yeah, definitely. And that's when I hear those stories, like that's where my heart breaks is because it's the children who suffer the most.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing too. You can go in for a modification, say the kids are with me 30% of the time. They're with my ex-spouse 70, but this is what he or she is spending the money on. Judge, can I go ahead and lessen my monthly and vow to pay for all of the sports gear, all of the private tuition, all of the $100, $200 jumpers, the speakers and school supplies. That way it's going for the needs of the children versus just trusting the other spouse, the ex-spouse, to spend it on the kids.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Like actually purchasing the things versus handing over a pot of money that could be used in
Yes.
anything.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Let's see. Okay, I know we talked about this a little bit. So divorce is obviously a very disruptive part of the life of not just the two parties, but the children, the family. What are like some emotional support resources maybe that families could leverage during this process to help them kind of cope and I guess hopefully heal throughout all of this?
It's really hard. I mean, in our culture, it's okay to sever and to cut so it's very difficult because life as it once was is no longer and never will be ever again. And so there's that grieving process.
Mhm.
A lot of people, they go to church and they try to find grief support groups. Sometimes there's some that are specifically for divorce. And then we're talking about maybe just a healthier relationship that just no longer works with something screwed up. I was going to say the effery. There's effery there. But, we're not even considering maybe a DV situation where he or she has been cut off from all of their friends and all money
Mm.
controlled by the other spouse. And there's children involved, and there's physical abuse and obviously emotional abuse. And this is very important. So where do they go? And they put off leaving their spouse and filing for divorce because they have no place to go and no support. So there are plenty of resources in every state that will help women and children. Even men are battered as well. There's men's homes with children, less available, but there are some out there, and that can help you get on your feet with jobs and with counseling. They provide a safe environment for the spouse and the children if they need to be removed, and a restraining order will be issued by the court immediately. So finding a nonprofit or going to the state and asking for assistance. As far as those that have resources through their workplace, there's always
Mm.
employee benefits that are available to help you grieve the loss of your partnership and love, and how, I'll speak for women, I'm not a man, but like how we feel maybe we weren't a good enough lover or a wife, a partner, not attractive enough, not skinny enough, not smart enough, not ambitious enough, too ambitious. It goes on and on. So it's a checkpoint for us. This is one of the biggest life changes, life events is what we call them, besides
Mhm.
losing a child, a loss of a job. Today, that's not such of a big thing because it's expected that you would move from job to job. Back in the day when you die at your desk after 46 years at Sears and Roebuck, that's a huge life event, is being let go from that job where you derived so much value, personal value of who you were based on what you did. So yes, so I would look for state resources and also nonprofits in your immediate area that can help. And if it's a DV situation and you know that it's not going to go well, maybe there's handguns in the house, your timing, your escape, you're preparing the kids and not telling them exactly what's going on. And I would just go to the police department, file a police report, and immediately take it to the court and ask for, and it's an ex parte hearing, an emergency hearing, to have that restraining order issued immediately, and find other lodging. So preferably find other lodging before you do it. And you have to stay disciplined, and anyone that you can rely on at that point, any type of pillar of strength and stability, very important. If you have any left.
Yeah. Ugh, that's tough. Just so to be clear, DV meaning domestic violence.
Yes, correct. Domestic
Yes.
violence. Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a whole other aspect too, man. So you have, yeah, I mean, you said you've been kind of helping clients navigate this process since 1995. What is the longest case that you've ever seen happen, like in terms of from start to end, I guess?
8 years.
Jeez, 8 years. That is crazy. Go ahead. You were gonna say.
I was just going to say, no one really cares about the person that's helping to help get them divorced. But I'll tell you, I don't take any more. I cannot, because it's like I'm getting divorced again. And
Yeah.
being in the middle and hearing, well, it's not just profanity, because I use profanity all the time. It's an emphasis. It's the energy in which it's said. And getting a call at 2 a.m. from a female client that her husband just broke into he moved out on his own accord, but came back at 2 a.m. drunk to strangle her. And
Mm.
I said, "What are you doing calling me? Please call the police."
Yeah.
And so she had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And while this was some time ago, I don't forget things like that. And being in the self-protection realm, obviously,
Yes.
physically, this is what my whole life is about, is protector energy, and asking women to feel it, embody it, and use it to their benefit. It's really, really hard for someone like me. I want to go and find that husband, but I can't. So I just get tired. It's really, if people could just self-regulate their emotions, if
Yeah.
they really want to get divorced, and one doesn't, I understand that, but the sooner we come into a level of neutrality, willingness, and acceptance of what is going on, the sooner we can all move on with our lives. And there's less damage that's done to our physical bodies. So lots of people get sick during this process. It's very painful, especially in the lung area. That's where we carry our grief. So hard to breathe, right? I mean, that's exactly a perfect way to describe divorce. Your wind has been sucked out of your lungs, and now you have to find a new way to breathe. And so it's very depleting on every level. But what needs to be okied needs to be okied. It needs to be severed, and the sooner that we can get through it peacefully, the better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the more we kind of talk through this, it just, like, guys, let's really think about what we want to do before we even get married. Like,
No,
it is
really
a huge decision
huge.
because, yeah, I mean, it's love, like marriage, like that's what you would like to think, but marriage is more than just the love piece.
Decision.
Like, yeah, it's,
Yeah, it's not the emotion. It's like it's the attachment to what we think we love. Love is a decision. It really is.
yeah,
I think once we're out of our 20s, 30s, and I shouldn't say it, some of us in our 50s are still like, can feel butterflies. I understand that. But let's really stay rooted. Let's stay
yeah,
rooted with the Aina, and take in the breath and feel and use your intellect. So the argument I always make, intellect and intuition equally. So love is supposed to be in this Western world, this like intuitive, like feely thing. Yes, and it can be. But maybe only once you use your intellect and see all the checky boxes are checked that you can feel stable with this person and that they've proven to be who they are. You don't want to marry the idea of who you think someone is.
yes,
Oh, heartbreaking, yet everyone does it to themselves. We haven't given proper time to watch someone in different circumstances, in different seasons, how we press them, how we don't press them. Sometimes you just need to close your mouth and see how they maneuver to see who they really are instead
mm,
of constantly guiding them along. This is very important. And you can't do that in 6 months. You have to like watch for a couple years and see how they talk about people. Who are their friends? How do
yes,
they treat their family? How does their family treat them? How do they speak about their colleagues? Like this really is a good indicator of someone's character. And
mhm.
do we want to link? They will ultimately represent you. So is this someone that you want to really link with legally
Yep,
and reputationally, right? There's reputational harm out there.
yep. That is very, very true.
So this should
Man,
be called Should You Even Get Married podcast. So yeah.
the dangers of divorce. Do you want to get married?
Yeah, it's painful. I mean, some of us are so scarred we never want to get married again
Oh,
because the Oki was so severe.
yeah. I mean, it is traumatic, right? Like, because you put a lot of trust into that you marry, and for that to not go in the way that is intended, man, it's hard to trust again, right? Like,
Hugely. And I think we don't intend for it to end somewhere, but if we're not intentional about where we want to go with our partner and sharing our lives, then we're going to end up somewhere we never intended to be. And I think that's most heartbreaking because we let ourselves down too. But it's not to like throw shame and guilt on us, but it's like if we would have known better, we would have made different decisions. And so now those of us that are a little bit older, more established, have been through it, I we owe it to ourselves to really be thoughtful and also spend time in our intuition because it can look great on paper. I was dating a gentleman that looked great for as far as a future partner, but my intuition, it just didn't feel right. And then
yeah,
you can date someone where it just feels great, like you connect and you know who they are, but then the intellect says, but the stability isn't there. So until it matches, don't settle. Don't settle because you will end up literally paying for it financially and emotionally in the end.
yeah. And I think when I think about it, like, I feel like maybe some people are afraid to be alone, and so they kind of rush into things sometimes. I've seen it happen, but that's kind of where I'm like, at least this is just for me. Like, I feel like if you're gonna get married, you touched upon this earlier. Is like, is this someone who, like, even if you weren't married, like, you would still want to be friends with them, right? Like, be friends before you get married.
I, yeah, I think it's great. I've only tried it once where I dated a friend. Before it was all like dates. And so that like that romantic aspect was there. And I really feel like I never really got to know the real person.
Mm,
So dating a friend it was really interesting because I knew who he was. I watched him in life for a couple years, and I just, to this day, I would say, you know what, I really like him. I really like him as a person, and I would hang out with him, and I want him to do well in all things. And it just kind of developed from there. And
yeah,
it was really beautiful. Before, I had a strict rule and I adhered to it. Obviously, never, ever would I ever date, kiss, go out with a friend, a male friend. And it actually was a really great experience for me. So something to consider, getting to know someone without that romantic aspect thrown in there.
yeah,
So it relieves a lot of pressure because you just be yourself, and it's wonderful.
yeah. And I think like just the way we look at our priorities change as we get older too, right? Like I'm sure the younger me would not be talking like this.
Agree.
Many years of learning and wisdom are speaking now.
My younger self would be like, what is this nonsense these wahine are talking
Right.
about? Old farts. Yeah. But I don't know, it changes. Who I'd be attracted to 5 years ago, I definitely wouldn't be attracted to now. And I think that's the beautiful part, is being able to evolve and allow ourselves to continue to evolve. And hopefully if we do match up with someone, they continue to evolve, you
Involved
know.
with us, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, my husband and I always talk about that, like evolution, not just as a couple, but just people evolving as individuals and bettering themselves and just learning, adapting, like all of the things. Like you shouldn't want to be the person that you were 10, 20 years ago. Like,
Some like that, though, stability. It's out of fear. And we all have our own trauma we have to work through, but those are the individuals that are most likely not working through their trauma. But I'll say this, in any relationship that I'm in now or in the future, if I feel like I have to give up a part of myself or what my goals or what I want to experience, I'm not talking other men that I want to experience, I mean like life
life
experiences,
stuff. Yeah.
then it's not the right relationship for me. And that's how I gauge it now.
Yeah. No, I would definitely agree with that. And I guess it's because as you're getting older, you're like, oh, I have so much time
Yeah,
left.
this
And
much time. It goes by quickly.
And
Absolutely.
I can't waste it. Like I have to do it on the things that I wanted to do, and hopefully, like I've made good choices so that my person is. But it's not always that you're gonna get what you want. It's not always what they're gonna get. There are those phases of life,
Yeah.
right? So I don't want people to be watching this like you guys are crazy. What the hell is wrong? No, there is negotiation and
There is.
compromise and all of that that has to happen in a
This is why it's
relationship.
good to meet once a year. So you can say, hey, last year we spent this much money on this trip for you or for school. This year I want a new car. You know, it could be something so silly and simple, but it's important to each other.
Definitely.
On that note too, if you do marry a friend, if it does work out to where you actually love being with that person, there's that friendship there. If it does end, you still have that friendship, so you're more likely to collaborate and say, you know what, I love you, but this isn't working in a romantic sense. And so then the divvying of all of the marital estate is easier, because you do wish the best for the other person. You were friends, and you most likely will still be friends, even
Hmm.
though you're no longer romantic. So there's something to be said about that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, we are at the end of the hour, which flew by again as always.
Blah, blah, blah.
I hope that everybody who is tuning in with us now, watching live or catching the replay, got some helpful nuggets out of this. If you have any further questions that we didn't quite touch upon that you'd like to hear about more, please leave it in the comments, where we always go back and check and try to make sure that future episodes touch on what you need, or just respond to you in the comments maybe in more detail. So yeah, so maybe if you're not married, hopefully you're scared in a healthy way.
Raw.
Think about the things. Go in with eyes wide open.
Yes.
These are the questions I should be thinking about. And if you're married and hopefully not headed down the divorce lane, maybe this is something that you can be like, might be time to check in with the other half and see, like, are we still on the same page?
Yeah, definitely. So sweet. I love that, thinking about that. People
Yeah,
share together and having a check-in. How many meetings do we have every week and we don't even meet with our spouse? So I think it's beautiful. Schedule it. Don't let anything get in the way, and make them a priority for at least an hour. Goodness.
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I think everybody can use reminders on that. Yeah, definitely. And thank you, Manu, for being open to talk about this, especially as someone who has experienced it. I know that can sometimes dredge up emotions too. So hopefully we didn't trigger too many things.
No, it puts me into gratitude, how I recovered and who I am able to be today, and how I do love my ex-husband. He's a good man. We're just not a good fit. I want him to be happy and to come into his own revelation and be successful. It's just not with me as a romantic partner. So yeah. Yep. Thank you. I'm grateful.
Same here. I'm grateful for my husband.
Yeah, your honey.
Yes, we were friends first, so it does help. That's why I said that. Alrighty, well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share. I know this is a topic that resonates with many people. I actually know a couple of people who are unfortunately going through this right now. So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to touch on it. And hopefully it helps them a little bit. And we want to thank again Manu for being with us. Have a great rest of your week. Hope everybody is doing well. And we will talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody. Aloha.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then. When they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands. Without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe. As a part of their ongoing war with Asia, used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe. As a part of their ongoing war with Asia, used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.